Hello and welcome back to my RC channel. I'm Andy RC and today I'm going to be checking out the FuriBee GT90. This is a brushless microcopter that forms part of the FuriBee GT series, and as you can see it's a miniature version of the GT215, which I reviewed on the channel yesterday, even down to the point where we have got this aluminium part of the frame that is the same, and this top plate as well. It is a little bit different though in that the 215 is a True X and the 90 is a Squished X. There is another model in the GT series called the GT220. That one hasn't been released yet, and GearBest have also announced a model called the Stormer, and that one seems very similar as well. Looks like a 5-inch model, but it's using 230 2100 kV motors, and hopefully I'll get to check that one out at some point. And there is another model listed on GearBest's website. It comes under the Aurora series, which seems to be the same frame as this. However, that one is a bit cheaper, but it doesn't have a CCD camera and it doesn't support a 3S battery, whereas this one has both of those things, so that might be worth considering. So let's take a look at the specs of this one. It weighs 63 grams without a battery. You aren't given a battery in the package, but as I say, they are allowing us to use a 3S battery, so I'm going to be using this Nanotech 450 milliamp battery with a JST. So yeah, she's in JST instead of XT30. I'd have preferred an XT30, but hopefully we will be fine with this. The motors are a 1104 7500 kV brushless motor, and the propellers are a 1935, so 1.9 inch prop. You are given a spare set of those and a rubber band, and they are already screwed in out of the box, which I like. You probably could, at a push, fit a 2-inch prop because there is a little bit of a gap there, so that might be an interesting upgrade there. The ESC is a 4-in-1 BL S 10 amp, and as I say, it supports a 3S battery. You can use a 2S battery as well, but why not go straight for the 3? The flight controller is an Omnibus F3 running Betaflight on-screen display. It's come flash with Betaflight version 3.2, which is nice. The model doesn't have any LEDs, and this is important, it does not come with a buzzer. However, as it is supporting D-Shot and D-Shot is set up, so D-Shot 600, you can run D-Shot commands to have a buzzer going off, and there is a solder pad for a buzzer. I think that they just didn't have enough room because everything is just packed in so tightly there. So above there we have got the receiver. It's a D8 receiver. I'll link in the below to all the different receivers, but this receiver should be fine for a micro. It's the same receiver that came with the GT215, but I think it's going to be fine on this one. And then yes, the camera up front is a micro CCD, which is actually better than the camera that came on the 215. It's really packed in there though. It's not a Runcam micro Swift, it's the FuriBee MS, which is basically a copy of it. It's running a 2.1mm lens, and it's crammed in there so tight they've even had to file away some of the cowling to get it to fit in. So on this little 3D printed mount here, and it's got an adhesive on it. The camera angle is fixed. It's at about 5 degrees, and I can't help but think if they remove this little 3D printed mount, you could mess around with the camera angle a little bit more, but as it is, you're stuck at about 5 degrees, which is quite a flat angle. It's fine for me though. The VTX, it's just 25 milliwatt, and it's the only thing I've had to change with this. If you look at the original pictures, the VTX is sat flat on the top with the linear antenna pointing out horizontally. You will not get great reception with it like that. I don't know why they didn't do what I have done here, and that is just remove the top and then route it around the back here and just use a cable tie, and now the linear antenna goes vertical. But yeah, it's a 25 milliwatt VTX, 48 channel, just a little button on here on the top. The antenna is soldered direct, so you can't remove it, and you have to press down quite hard on the button. So yeah, it's at the top there, not where you would expect pressing down on the side. there. And yeah, you've got some LEDs on here, a set for the channels and a set for the bands. And as usual, it's like a couple of second press to go through the different bands and a short press through the individual channels. You get given this manual here, and once again the frequency chart isn't matching up to this, so I don't know what they're playing at here. So a very similar manual to what I got with the GT215, just tells you the specs really rather than the setup. However, I'm pleased to say this one was much easier to set up. I've gone and put my own PIDs in there. I think I changed the Super 8 to 0.8, turn motor stop off, move some of the on-screen display around, and that was pretty much it. It was very easy to set up, and it's been a much easier copter to review than the GT215, which had some problems. So I have bound it to my Tyrannus and set up my usual modes as it's 3.2. I've got anti-gravity in there, I've got air mode, dynamic filtering, and set small underscore angle equals 180 for if it gets flipped upside down, etc. And I'm not using turtle mode. People say, why don't you like turtle mode? And throughout all of the reviews that I have done, I think 3 copters have had their ESCs die because it was running with the motor caught in something. So that's why I don't like to use turtle mode yet. 3 copters out of, I don't know, 300 that maybe I've tested in the past isn't bad, but I don't want to take the risk. That is just my personal opinion. I'm sure there's lots of people out there having fun with turtle mode, and that's absolutely fine. For FPV, I'm going to be using my Fatshark Dominator HD3s along with a Bandicoot linear antenna. It's a patch for these linear antennas here, and it works really well. And then it's a on-way cloverleaf antenna with a Realacc Pro Plus diversity module, and this is what I'm going to be using to show the flight footage today. Okay, let's go for the line of sight with this one. Hope you can see it okay, because it is a tiny model. I've gone straight for the 3S because YOLO. Let's have a look at the punch. Not bad at all. I've given it similar PIDs to the Ishin Lizard because I know that that works well for this size model on a 3S. Let's see what the acro is like. Yep, seems alright, line of sight. Oh, it's a capable machine, just as I thought it would be. Look at that, snappy. Ah, FuriBee, you're just nailing it at the moment. Of course, there've been a couple of models that needed some work, like the X215 and the Nebula. But all this one's needed so far is the VTX pointing vertical, and that is such an easy thing to do. I don't know why they didn't do that, but there you go. Plenty of punch on a 3S. I think it actually needs the 3S, you know, because of those smaller props. It's not too noisy. It's flying nice. Of course, it's missing a buzzer, but you can add one, or you can do the D-shot commands, so there are options there. It's a nice price, I think, and the fact that we've got a CCD camera, well, that's just the icing on the top, isn't it? Oh yeah, I like this. There's 15 mile per hour winds today, and this thing still flies. Wonderful. And it flies nice. Oh, it's getting knocked around a little bit by the wind though. But what can you expect? Nice power loops. The orientation's tricky with it being so small. But anyways, line of sight test passed. Let's come in for a landing and get some FPV done with it. Just look at the camera quality of this one. It is so much better than the GT250. I don't know why they didn't use this camera on that model. I think it would have been lighter, it would have been better quality. But there you go. I'm not sure it's the same team of people that come up with these copters because they're outputting so much at the moment. Maybe they just given a general idea, maybe a colour scheme, and say work towards that, because yeah, the quality of these copters is definitely different, and yeah, absolutely loving the video quality of this one. There is not much noise filtering through the system, and you tend to find that with the lower powered VTX. Just look at how much power this thing's got on a 3S, and I think it'd have even more on the 2-inch props, but really pleased how it flew. As for the tune, with it being a squished X, it did need a slightly different tune than I would usually put on these micro. So I'll overlay my PIDs here. One thing I want to say though is that the weather conditions were awful. I know I always say that, but the wind was really pushing it. It was like 15-mile-per-hour winds, and I got to the point where I was happy with the tune, but it was getting knocked around by the wind, and there's nothing you can do with that. I mean, it's a 90mm frame, you know, so it's going to get pushed by the wind, but in general, I was happy with how it flew, and I'm going to look forward to flying it in calmer conditions. But yeah, video reception really good, and camera quality, look at that, just pointed at the sun. These are exactly the same conditions I was flying the GT215 in, and it is such a difference. Alright, it's not perfect conditions, I mean look at that, just straight into the sun there. Probably about 11 o'clock here, and the sun doesn't get much higher in the sky than that, but I was able to fly with it, and yeah, much more impressed with this model than I was with the 215 version. It'd be nice if you could run a little bit more camera angle, and I'm sure you could do that, but in general, yeah, I think it's a better model. It's nicely priced. Shame it doesn't have a buzzer. I think that's going to put some people off. You can add one. You can look up how to do D-Shock commands and get the motors making the noise. Of course, that's not as loud as an actual buzzer, and you have to be careful with that because, you know, you can do damage to the motors if you run that for too long. You know, they're not designed for doing that, really. As for the flight time, this battery is over a year old, like a year and a half even. So the flight time was 3 minutes with this old battery. I'm sure you could get more with a newer battery. But yeah, in general, I was happy with the performance of it. I think it's a good copter, and I'm going to be recommending this one. So I'll put a link in the description if you wish to check it out. And what are we at there? 3 minutes. Let's come in for a landing. And as always, thanks so much for watching. Please continue to subscribe. Cheers.